Oh, Hubert Green. Hubert and I go way, way back. I remember the first time I met Hubert Green. It was in Hawaii. I can't exactly remember the year, but Hubert played extremely well in that particular golf tournament. And I remember he hit like a 7-iron on the 15th hole, if I'm not mistaken, and the ball hit the side of the green and jumped out of bounds.
When Hubert Green said Gary Player had no talent for being genuine, he wasn't just throwing shade. He was exposing something deeper about the men he competed against at the highest level of golf. Green had a list of 6 golfers he openly couldn't stand. And this wasn't about jealousy or petty drama. This was about a code he lived by that most of his peers had abandoned. A code forged in the most terrifying moment professional golf has ever seen. June 19th, 1977, Southern Hills Country Club in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The final round of the US Open. Hubert Green walked off the 14th green, leading by 1 stroke, grinding through the oppressive heat like he always did. Then a Tulsa police lieutenant and tournament officials intercepted him. They had news that would make most men walk away. An anonymous woman had called the FBI with a specific threat. Hubert Green would be shot on the 15th green. Not might be, would be. She named the player, the hole, the exact location. Officials gave Green 3 options. Suspend play immediately, wait for a security sweep that could delay the finish until the next day, or continue at his own risk. Green didn't hesitate. He said, "Let's go." No emotion, no fear. He told his caddy to walk at a distance, so if a shot rang out, only Green would get hit. The 15th hole became the kill zone. Police sharpshooters scanned the trees while Green stood over his ball. He hooked his drive into a tree, but it kicked back into play. He hit a recovery shot and faced a long 2-putt for par. Standing over that ball, waiting for a gunshot that could come at any second, he drained the putt. Then something remarkable happened. The adrenaline didn't make him fall apart. It made him sharper. He birdied the 16th to extend his lead. On the 18th, needing only a bogey to win his first major, Green shanked his approach into a bunker. The pressure finally caught up, but not enough to stop him. He blasted out to 4 feet and sank the putt to win by 1 stroke. In the locker room afterward, he told his caddy not to talk about it. "It's not good for golf," he said. "We don't want other kooks coming out and doing it." Even after surviving a death threat, he protected the game first. That's who Hubert Green was, and that's why he had zero tolerance for the phonies, complainers, and showmen he competed against. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment telling me which of these rivalries you think cut the deepest. Because what Green did to these 6 golfers wasn't just competitive trash talk. It was something closer to moral judgment. Gary Player was first on the list and Green didn't hold back. He called Player the biggest phony on the face of the earth. That's not something you say lightly about a Hall of Famer. Player was the consummate golf ambassador, always positive, always preaching fitness and international goodwill, always smiling for the cameras. He traveled more than any athlete in history and built this image of tireless optimism. To Green, who valued raw honesty above everything, that smile was a mask. The positive attitude was calculated. The whole package was designed for public relations, not real competition. Green played golf with a cigarette in his mouth and a scowl on his face. Player played with a wave to the gallery and theatrical reactions to every shot. Green saw that as gamesmanship, a strategic use of personality to distract opponents and win over crowds. It violated everything Green believed about how the game should be played. You show up, you hit your shots, you move on. You don't perform. The real breaking point came at the 1978 Masters. Green entered the final round in a commanding position. Player was 7 strokes back, essentially out of contention. Then Player went on one of the most famous charges in major championship history. He shot 64 in the final round, setting a clubhouse target that crushed everyone still on the course. Green, playing in the final groups, watched his lead evaporate. On the 18th green, he faced a 3-foot putt to force a playoff with Player. As Green settled over the ball, a radio announcer's voice cut through his concentration. Green had to back away and reset. For a player who relied on rhythm and tempo more than anything, that disruption was fatal. He missed the putt. Player won by 1 stroke. Green later said only an amateur would have been put off by the interruption, refusing to make excuses. But that moment linked him forever to Player in bitter defeat. Losing to a man he viewed as a phony after such a dramatic collapse was something he never forgot. Lanny Wadkins was next, and the hatred here was different. Wadkins and Green were too similar. Both played fast. Both were fierce competitors. Both had sharp tongues. But Green despised how Wadkins complained, especially about course conditions. The 1974 U.S. Open at Winged Foot was the breaking point. The USGA set up the course to be nearly unplayable after Johnny Miller shot 63 the previous year. The rough was ankle deep. The greens were rock hard. It was a grinder's paradise, exactly the kind of golf Green thrived in. During one round, Wadkins hit his ball into the deep rough and started complaining loudly about the lie, the setup, and how unfair everything was. Green watched this display and delivered one of his most famous lines. It couldn't have been too bad. "I could still see your knees." That cut through Wadkins like a blade. It exposed the complaint as whining in Green's eyes. The difficulty of the course was a fact to be endured, not broadcast to everyone around you. If the rough was deep, you hacked it out and moved on. Green despised the performative aspect of Wadkins' anger. Green could be grumpy himself, but he directed it inward or at his own game. He didn't make excuses about course setup. Wadkins' vocal dissatisfaction disrupted Green's concentration and violated his principle of stoic acceptance. Their rivalry was a constant territorial battle, two wolves circling the same space. Lee Trevino represented everything Green wasn't. Trevino dealt with pressure by talking constantly. He engaged galleries, caddies, and playing partners with jokes and stories. He turned the golf course into his personal stage. For Green, who required silence and rapid execution to maintain focus, Trevino was a nightmare. Green found Trevino's constant chatter a major distraction. It wasn't just that Trevino talked. It was that his talking was strategic, a mechanism for his own relaxation that directly attacked Green's mechanism for concentration. Green believed you did your work on the course and moved on. Trevino believed the course was entertainment. The 1985 PGA Championship at Cherry Hills brought this conflict to a head. Trevino was the defending champion and led going into the final rounds. Green found himself in a direct duel with the man whose style he despised most. They traded the lead back and forth through the final round. Trevino engaged the crowd like always while Green marched grimly between shots. The turning point came on the 15th hole, where Trevino three-putted for bogey. Green, maintaining his laser focus and refusing to be drawn into Trevino's orbit, paired the hole and eventually won by 2 strokes. This victory was particularly sweet. It vindicated Green's method. By beating Trevino head-to-head in a major, Green proved his doer silent intensity could dismantle the game of the tour's most charismatic extrovert. Tom Watson embodied everything the media loved and Green resented. Watson was the golden boy, clean-cut with a classical swing. Stanford educated, adored by every journalist who covered the tour. He succeeded Nicklaus as the dominant force in golf, and the media couldn't write enough glowing profiles. Green, with his scrappy swing and Alabama drawl, felt marginalized. The 1977 Open Championship at Turnberry crystallized this resentment. The tournament is remembered as the Duel in the Sun, a two-man race between Watson and Nicklaus. They separated themselves from the field in what's considered the greatest head-to-head battle in golf history. Hubert Green finished third, 10 strokes back, but significantly ahead of everyone else. After the tournament, Green delivered a quote dripping with subtext. "I won this golf tournament. I don't know what game those other two guys were playing." On the surface, it was a compliment to their performance. Underneath, it revealed Green's deep frustration. He had played championship-caliber golf, finishing at 1 under par, yet was rendered a footnote by the narrative of the Golden Boy and the King. Green felt his unorthodox style and gritty demeanor were undervalued compared to Watson's image. Watson represented the establishment that Green had spent his life fighting from the margins. Johnny Miller brought a different kind of resentment. Miller was the blonde Californian, the desert fox, who could shoot 63 without breaking a sweat. He hit high, soaring irons that landed softly, perfect target golf. Green dug his shots out of the dirt, hitting low, piercing balls that ran out. Miller's confidence bordered on arrogance. Later in his broadcasting career, he'd earned the nickname Fig Jam behind his back. For a grinder like Green, Miller's effortless brilliance and vocal self-assurance were deeply irritating. Green once made a cryptic comment about Miller. "Everybody thought the fix was going to be in, and I was going to be the one who got Johnny Miller." The quote reveals professional jealousy mixed with annoyance at Miller's style. Miller represented California cool golf. Perfect lies, perfect weather, perfect swings. That was alien to Green's Alabama grit. Green felt Miller's style was soft compared to the hard-nosed golf required to win U.S. Opens. Seve Ballesteros was the final name on Green's list, and this rivalry had a different edge. As the European wave crashed onto the American tour in the late 70s and early 80s, Sev brought match play intensity and gamesmanship that old-school American pros found distasteful. Green was a traditionalist who valued honor and adherence to established tour etiquette. Ballesteros pushed boundaries constantly, coughing at opportune times, questioning drops, playing slowly to unsettle opponents. In Green's view, Sev's genius was undeniable, but his methods were suspect. The gamesmanship Green despised in Gary Player reached its peak with Seve. Furthermore, Seve represented a threat to American dominance. Green played on 3 Ryder Cup teams and went undefeated in singles. He viewed Seve not just as a rival, but as an agent of chaos, disrespecting the established order. The coughing incidents and aggressive bending of rules were opposite to everything Green's code demanded. What connected all 6 of these feuds was authenticity. Green didn't hate these men for their talent. He resented what they represented: the encroachment of noise, artifice, and ego into what should have been pure competition. Players' phony smile, Watkins' complaints, Trevino's chatter, Watson's media coronation, Miller's arrogance, Seve's gamesmanship. Each one violated a different part of Green's code. Subscribe and drop a comment. Does golf need more personalities like Hubert Green today? Or was his brand of brutal honesty too harsh for the modern game? Because looking back at these feuds, it's clear Green wasn't bitter or jealous. He was a purist defending a version of golf that was disappearing around him. In an era where professional athletes were being media trained into bland inoffensiveness, Green's cantankerous nature stands out as raw honesty. He was a man who played under a death threat without flinching, yet couldn't abide a phony smile or a complaint about a bad lie. His legacy is that of the ultimate purist, someone who cared so deeply about the integrity of competition that he had no patience for the pageantry surrounding it. When Hubert Green walked the fairways, he did so with the conviction that golf was not a popularity contest, but a survival test. And in that test, he found many of his peers wanting. He won 19 PGA Tour events and 2 majors, but more than that, he won on his own terms. He never softened his edges for sponsors or journalists. He never pretended to like players he didn't respect. He never turned competition into entertainment. The death threat at Southern Hills wasn't just a story about surviving physical danger. It was proof of Green's entire philosophy. When faced with literal assassination, he didn't break stride. He calculated the risk, made his decision, and executed. That same mentality applied to everything else in his career. Other players complained about conditions. Green played through them. Other players sought media attention. Green avoided it. Other players built friendships on tour. Green kept his distance because he believed friends got in the way of winning. His list of 6 golfers wasn't petty scorekeeping. It was a moral inventory of everything he believed professional golf should not be. Each name represented a different violation of his code. Golf was meant to be hard. It was meant to test you physically and mentally until you broke or proved yourself. It wasn't meant to be friendly or entertaining or easy. The moment it became those things, it stopped being pure. And Hubert Green spent his entire career fighting to keep it pure, even if that fight made him the most cantankerous man on tour. Looking at modern golf, it's hard to imagine someone like Green surviving. The sport demands personality now. It demands social media presence and sponsor-friendly quotes and carefully managed images. The idea of openly calling Gary Player a phony or telling Lenny Watkins to stop whining would end a career before it started. But maybe that's exactly why Green's story matters. He proved you could win at the highest level without compromising who you were. His victory in 1985 at the PGA Championship, beating Lee Trevino by 2 strokes, was the perfect bookend to his major championship career. After years of watching Trevino work crowds and tell jokes, Green silenced him with pure execution. No words, no theater, just golf played the way Green believed it should be played. Fast, focused, and ruthlessly efficient. That win was more than another major. It was validation that his entire approach actually worked. Hubert Green died in 2018, and the golf world mourned a complicated legacy. He was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame, recognized for his 19 wins and his influence on the game. But the real legacy isn't in the trophy case. It's in the reminder that excellence doesn't require likability, that you can be difficult and demanding and cantankerous and still be right about what matters. Green didn't just expose 6 golfers he couldn't stand. He exposed what professional golf was becoming, and he refused to go quietly into that transformation. He stayed exactly who he was until the end. Tough as nails, brutally honest, and unwilling to forgive the phonies.
But I had a day out here on a Sunday where the year Westwood won, and him and I had a real...
Thomas Bjorn exposes 7 golfers he absolutely cannot stand. And what he says about them reveals the ugliest side of European golf. The Great Dane built his reputation on brutal honesty. And when it comes to these 7 names, he holds nothing back. From captains he called pathetic to teammates who betrayed the Ryder Cup itself, Bjorn's enemies list reads like a who's who of controversy. These aren't just petty disagreements. They're explosive feuds that tore friendships apart and exposed deep fractures in the game. Let's start with the worst betrayal of all. Henrik Stenson didn't just leave European golf. He abandoned his post as Ryder Cup captain mid-mission, and Thomas Bjorn had to pick up the pieces. In 2022, Stenson accepted one of golf's highest honors when he was named captain for the 2023 Rome matches. He appointed Bjorn as his vice captain. They started building the team together, sharing strategic plans and sensitive data about players. Then Stenson signed with LIV Golf and everything collapsed. The DP World Tour stripped him of the captaincy immediately. It was a historic humiliation, the first time a sitting captain had been removed. But the real damage went deeper than headlines. Bjorn described the situation as a betrayal, and he meant it. Stenson didn't just quit a job, he violated a sacred trust. The captaincy isn't about money or personal glory, it's about serving your teammates and protecting the legacy of European golf. Stenson took the role knowing full well what it meant, then sold it for a Saudi paycheck. Bjorn was left scrambling to stabilize the team and help find a replacement in Luke Donald. The chaos Stenson created threw months of preparation into the trash. Unlike other LIV defectors who were just players, Stenson held the most important leadership position in European golf. That's what made his decision unforgivable in Bjorn's eyes. You don't accept the captaincy and then abandon ship. The professional relationship between them is completely severed now, and Bjorn's pointed comments about moving forward and loyalty were barely veiled attacks on Stenson's character. Sergio Garcia's defection hit Bjorn differently. This wasn't rage, it was sadness. Garcia and Bjorn were teammates for decades during Europe's golden era of Ryder Cup dominance. They shared locker rooms, celebrated victories, and built what felt like brotherhood. When Garcia joined LIV Golf in 2022 and resigned his DP World Tour membership, he didn't just leave quietly, he lashed out, claiming he wanted to play where he was loved. That narrative wounded Bjorn deeply. Garcia had been nurtured and celebrated by the European Tour his entire career. To turn around and attack the institution while walking out the door felt like rewriting history. Bjorn expressed his frustration publicly, saying it was very sad to receive such treatment for a personal and professional decision. The word choice matters. Sad, not angry. Bjorn saw Garcia as a tragic figure who burned down his own legacy for money. What hurt most was that Garcia's choice effectively ended his Ryder Cup career. To Bjorn, the Ryder Cup represents the pinnacle of professional golf. Trading that for guaranteed cash was incomprehensible. The friendship they built over years dissolved in weeks. Reports describe their current relationship as strained, which is diplomatic language for broken. They'll likely never share a locker room again, and for Bjorn, that loss stings more than any on-course defeat. Ian Poulter built his entire brand on being the Ryder Cup warrior. He called himself the postman because he always delivered. But when Poulter joined LIV Golf, he tried to have it both ways, and Thomas Bjorn wasn't having it. Poulter sued the DP World Tour to maintain his playing rights and argued he should still be eligible for future Ryder Cup teams. Bjorn, serving on the tour's board, took a hardline stance. He publicly emphasized that LIV players were facing the consequences of their own choices. No exceptions, no special treatment. Not even for Ryder Cup legends. Make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment. Do you think Bjorn was right to block Poulter from the Ryder Cup, or should legends get special treatment? Let's hear it. Bjorn went further by advocating for a full rebuild around young committed players like Nicolai Højgaard and Ludvig Åberg. The message to Poulter was clear. You chose to leave. You don't get to come back when it's convenient. Poulter tried to publicly downplay the tension, saying, Thomas is Thomas. He's extremely vocal. We disagree, but we're friends. Bjorn's actions told a different story. By strictly enforcing eligibility rules against his former teammate, Bjorn positioned himself as the institutional enforcer. The conflict wasn't just about rules. It was about Poulter's sense of entitlement. He believed his Ryder Cup legacy should grant him immunity from consequences. Bjorn believed nobody was above the tour's regulations, especially not someone who took Saudi money and then demanded European privileges. Paul Lawrie fired a shot at Thomas Bjorn that exposed uncomfortable truths about European golf's power structure. In 2023, after Henrik Stenson's removal, rumors circulated that Bjorn might return as a caretaker captain to steady the ship. Lawrie, the 1999 Open champion, publicly called the idea a joke, but his criticism went deeper than questioning Bjorn's competence. Lawrie accused the tour of operating as a closed circle, a small clique of friends rotating leadership positions among themselves. Names like Bjorn, Lee Westwood, Darren Clarke, and Paul McGinley kept appearing in key roles while outsiders like Lawrie were ignored. Bjorn took the accusation personally. As someone who prided himself on service to the tour, being labeled part of a cronyism network attacked his integrity directly. To Bjorn, his repeated involvement in tour leadership was about duty and experience. To Laurie, it looked like a power grab by insiders protecting their territory. This feud wasn't about one decision. It represented a fundamental divide between the tour establishment and those who felt marginalized by it. Laurie saw fresh candidates being passed over for the same recycled faces. Bjorn saw qualified leaders being asked to serve when crises demanded experience. The tension continues to simmer whenever captaincy discussions arise. Colin Montgomery and Thomas Bjorn represent opposite philosophies of leadership. Montgomery, an 8-time Order of Merit winner, led with dominance and entitlement. Bjorn operated as a representative of the players, focused on fairness and collective good. Their friction came to a head during Montgomery's 2010 captaincy at Celtic Manor, where Bjorn served as vice captain. On the surface, they worked toward the same goal of victory. Beneath that surface, deep disagreements simmered about politics and locker room management. Montgomery's style was autocratic. He positioned himself as the center of gravity, making decisions from the top down. He described his own approach as very common sense, but others, including Bjorn, saw it as overly political. Bjorn valued the Band of Brothers ethos where every voice mattered equally. Under Monty's leadership, that organic chemistry felt stifled. The dominant personality didn't leave much room for democratic input. Montgomery focused on winning at all costs, even if it meant bruising egos along the way. Bjorn cared about long-term team culture, not just short-term results. The locker room tension was palpable. Bjorn has hinted that Montgomery's management style created unnecessary friction among veterans who expected more collaborative leadership. This wasn't a public explosion like the Woosnam incident. It was a prolonged philosophical disagreement that played out behind closed doors. Bjorn viewed Montgomery as effective but not admirable, a necessary force for winning but not a model for how the tour should operate. Their relationship remains professionally respectful on the surface, but the underlying tension about how to treat peers has never fully resolved. The 2006 Ryder Cup at the K-Club produced the most explosive public meltdown in European golf history, and Ian Woosnam was at the center of it. Bjorn, ranked 24th in the world and a proven Ryder Cup veteran, believed he deserved one of Woosnam's 2 wildcard picks. The other pick was guaranteed to go to Darren Clarke, who had recently lost his wife to cancer. What happened next wasn't about the decision itself. It was about how Woosnam delivered the news. Bjorn expected a formal meeting or at minimum a respectful phone call. What he got was 20 seconds in a hotel bar. Woosnam walked in, told Bjorn that Lee had won twice at the K-Club, so he was going with him, then walked out. 20 seconds in a bar. To Bjorn, the setting and brevity were profound insults to his professional standing. He felt Woosnam was incapable of doing the right thing and lacked basic leadership skills. The next morning, Bjorn unleashed a media assault that stunned the golf world. He called Woosnam's captaincy the most pathetic he had ever seen. He said the man was barmy and accused him of failing to communicate with the team or contenders. Bjorn declared his relationship with Woosnam completely dead and said he had lost all respect for him. The comments were visceral, personal, and unprecedented. The European Tour fined Bjorn a substantial sum to protect the sanctity of the captaincy. Under pressure and likely realizing he had jeopardized his future with the tour, Bjorn issued a retraction the next day. He apologized and claimed the comments were made in the heat of the moment. Woosnam confronted the team in the locker room, asking if they supported Bjorn's views. The team rallied around their captain, and Europe won comfortably at the K-Club. But the damage was done. The barmy comment permanently altered public perception of Woosnam's leadership, casting him as chaotic. It also painted Bjorn as volatile, even if passionate. They have shared public spaces since then, but the relationship was shattered in that hotel bar and never recovered. Mark James gave Thomas Bjorn his first taste of Ryder Cup heartbreak, and the bitterness never fully healed. In 1999, Bjorn finished 11th on the points list, just outside automatic qualification. Convention said the player in 11th place, especially one in good form, should be the primary wildcard candidate. James had other ideas. He picked Jesper Parnevik and Andrew Coulthard instead. While Parnevik was an established star, Coulthard was a Scottish rookie ranked lower than Bjorn. The decision was controversial from the start. What created lasting resentment wasn't the pick itself, but the cold silence that followed. James never called Bjorn to explain the decision or offer encouragement. There was no conversation, no acknowledgement of Bjorn's efforts throughout the qualifying campaign. It was a bureaucratic omission that Bjorn interpreted as profound disrespect. The situation got worse when James barely used Coulthard. He benched him for the first 3 sessions of play. Coulthard didn't strike a ball until Sunday singles, where he was matched against Tiger Woods and lost. Bjorn watched from home as the player chosen over him sat unused while Europe suffered the infamous collapse at Brookline. This experience created what can only be called foundational trauma for Bjorn. It taught him the Ryder Cup selection process could be arbitrary and political. James's aloof management style, which created a clear divide between the playing 10 and the bench 2, became Bjorn's anti-model for leadership. When Bjorn captained Europe in 2018, his obsession with communication and ensuring every player felt valued traced directly back to the cold shoulder he received from Mark James in 1999. The relationship between them remains professional but distant, a scar that never fully healed even decades later. These 7 feuds map the evolution of Thomas Bjorn from excluded competitor to institutional guardian. In his early years with James and Woosnam, Bjorn fought for meritocracy and competent leadership. His anger was the anger of someone left out who knew he deserved better. As he moved into tour leadership roles, his conflicts with Montgomery and Laurie centered on how power should be distributed. He resisted autocratic control and defended against accusations of cronyism. In the modern era, his battles with Garcia, Poulter, and Stenson became existential fights for the soul of European golf itself. The LIV defections forced Bjorn to choose between friendship and institution. He chose the institution every time. With Garcia, he expressed sadness over a broken brotherhood. With Poulter, he enforced consequences without exception. With Stenson, he condemned betrayal of the highest office in European golf. These weren't easy choices. They cost him relationships built over decades. But Bjorn believes the Ryder Cup is bigger than any individual player or personal connection. Critics accuse Bjorn of holding grudges and being too harsh. Supporters see him as the last honest voice in a sport that has become too corporate and calculated. The truth probably lives somewhere between those extremes. Bjorn says exactly what he thinks in a world where most players are media trained into saying nothing. He called a captain pathetic because he cared about the quality of leadership. He called a teammate's defection sad because he cared about the team. He clashed with Monty because he cared about locker room culture. These 7 golfers represent the boundaries of Bjorn's tolerance. They're the men who, in his view, placed ego, money, or incompetence above the collective good of European golf. Whether you see Bjorn as a guardian or grudge holder depends on what you value more: loyalty to institutions or loyalty to individuals. What's undeniable is that Bjorn has never wavered from his principles, even when defending them cost him friendships and public favor. The fights with James and Woosnam taught Bjorn how not to lead. The tensions with Montgomery and Laurie forced him to define his own leadership philosophy. The breaks with Garcia, Poulter, and Stenson demanded he decide what mattered most when friendship and duty conflicted. Every time, Bjorn chose the institution. That choice defines his legacy as much as his 2018 captaincy victory does. Thomas Bjorn stands as European golf's happy warrior, bruised by battles with his own peers, but still defending the Ryder Cup from threats both external and internal. His list of enemies isn't a collection of petty grievances. It's a roadmap of the tour's defining crises over 3 decades. The feuds cost him, but they also revealed his core belief that the game is bigger than any player's ego or bank account. So what do you think? Was Bjorn right to call out these 7 golfers, or did his honesty cross into grudge holding? Should captains like Woosnam and James have communicated better, or was Bjorn too sensitive about being left out? And when it comes to LIV defectors, did Bjorn do the right thing by enforcing consequences, or should legends like Poulter and Garcia get special treatment? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a conversation worth having because it goes to the heart of what we value in professional golf: legacy or money, loyalty or freedom, institution or individual. Bjorn made his choice clear. Now you make yours.
So you know what you guys do when he gets in here? Pat him on the back, say congratulations, enjoy it, and tell him not to serve fried chicken next year. Got it. Right.
It's been Arnold. Arnold's probably the toughest to play with of the 3.
Why?
I think it's the people who follow Arnold Palmer. Now, Jack is very easy to play with. He does talk. I mean, even though the people on TV don't see him doing that.
Fuzzy Zoeller didn't just play golf, he exposed it. While everyone else was treating the sport like some sacred ritual, Zoeller was out there whistling down fairways, waving white towels, and calling out the phonies who made the game miserable to watch. He couldn't stand the robots grinding over every shot, the intimidators hiding behind their brands, or the stuffed shirts who thought golf was too good for regular people. And for a while, that made him a hero. But when he tried to expose Tiger Woods in 1997, everything backflipped. The jokester became the villain, and the man who spent his career calling people out got called out himself in the worst way possible. Let's start with Tom Watson, because if you want to understand what Fuzzy Zoeller hated about modern golf, Watson was patient zero. This was the late 70s, and Watson had become the new king after Jack Nicklaus started fading. Watson was brilliant, no doubt about it, but he turned golf into homework. Every shot was a math problem. Every putt required a dissertation. He conquered courses through sheer mental torture, grinding them into submission like he was trying to punish the grass itself. Zoeller looked at that approach and saw everything wrong with where the sport was heading. Zoeller had a different philosophy entirely. He famously said, "I realize I'm not a machine." That was a direct shot at Watson and everyone like him. While Watson was out there thinking a million calculated thoughts, Zoeller joked that a million thoughts went through his mind too. What little mind he had. He wasn't trying to conquer his brain. He was trying to ignore it. Watson got compared to Huckleberry Finn because of his gap-toothed smile, but there was nothing playful about how he approached competition. Meanwhile, Zoeller was actually living like Huck Finn, floating down the fairway with a cigarette and a vodka tonic, treating major championships like a good time that just happened to have a trophy attached. The clash between these two philosophies exploded at the 1979 Masters. Context matters here. Nobody had won the Masters on their first try since Gene Sarazen in 1935. That's 44 years of the golf world deciding you needed experience to handle Augusta National's pressure. Watson was the defending champion from 1977 and the heavy favorite. He had the pedigree, the strategic mind, the whole package. Zoeller was the rookie who seemed way too loose for the moment. Then Ed Snead collapsed on the final day, missing par putts on 16, 17, and 18. Suddenly we had the first sudden death playoff in Masters history, and it was Watson, Snead, and Zoeller standing on the 10th tee. Watson carried the weight of expectation like he always did. Snead was broken from his meltdown. Zoeller looked like he was about to order another drink. They all made par on 10. Then came the 11th hole, one of the most dangerous in golf, and Zoeller faced a 6-foot birdie putt to win the whole thing. He didn't stand over it forever like Watson would have. He didn't treat it like defusing a bomb. He just hit it with rhythm, and when the ball dropped, Zoeller flung his putter into the air like a kid who just won a carnival game. That moment shattered everything Augusta National stood for. The quiet cathedral of golf just watched a rookie beat their cerebral golden boy by refusing to take any of it seriously. Zoeller proved you didn't need to suffer to win. You could whistle, joke, play fast, and still beat the greatest thinking golfer on the most intimidating course in America. For Zoeller, that victory validated everything he believed. Watson and the other grinders were killing the entertainment value. They treated the gallery like furniture to ignore instead of people paying to watch a show. Zoeller famously said every shot makes someone happy, recognizing that professional golf was supposed to be fun to watch. He mocked the indistinguishability of serious players, joking that Lanny Wadkins and Tom Watson all blurred together into the same boring package. To Zoeller, Watson's conquest of the mind was pointless if it stripped the soul out of the game. What good was perfection if nobody wanted to watch you achieve it? Now let's talk about Greg Norman, because if Watson represented the old guard of American grinding, Norman was the new breed of corporate athlete. The great white shark was everything Zoeller wasn't. Physically intimidating, aggressively branded, played with swagger that crossed into arrogance. Norman wanted to dominate you psychologically before the first tee shot. Zoeller looked at all that intensity and saw a performance hiding vulnerability. While Norman projected invincibility, Zoeller projected fallibility, saying he wasn't a great player, but he was a damn good one. That contrast exploded at the 1984 US Open at Winged Foot. The final round became famous for one image: Fuzzy Zoeller waving a white towel at Greg Norman. Here's what actually happened. Norman was playing in the group ahead, and on 18 he holed this miraculous 40-foot par putt. The gallery erupted. Zoeller, standing back in the fairway, heard the explosion and assumed Norman had made birdie to take the lead. Thinking he'd been beaten, Zoeller pulled out a white towel and waved it in mock surrender. Except Norman hadn't made birdie. He'd only saved par. Zoeller later admitted the moment was way more embarrassing than anyone remembers, because he'd basically surrendered to someone who hadn't actually won. But that gesture did something brilliant. It disarmed Norman completely. Here was the shark, trying to intimidate everyone with his intensity, and Zoeller was treating the US Open like a Sunday afternoon joke. He signaled he wasn't scared. More importantly, he showed the crowd he was having fun while Norman was busy taking himself too seriously. The towel became the headline, but the real exposure came the next day in the 18-hole playoff. If Norman thrived on pressure and intimidation, the playoff should have been his moment to devour the Joker. Instead, Zoeller destroyed him, shot a 67 while Norman fell apart to 75. That's an 8-stroke demolition in a US Open playoff. It wasn't just a victory, it was a complete repudiation of everything Norman represented. Zoller proved that all that branding, all that swagger, all that psychological warfare meant nothing against someone who refused to play the intimidation game. By not taking Norman seriously, Zoller neutralized his greatest weapon. Norman was brittle under pressure when facing someone who wouldn't engage in the mental battle. Zoller later joked he regretted giving away the now famous towel. One final dig at the fact that he was the one holding the trophy, while Norman went home empty. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Do you think Zoller's approach would work in today's ultra-serious golf world? Or was he the last of a dying breed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're enjoying this breakdown of golf's most controversial personality, go ahead and subscribe. We're just getting started with how Fuzzy exposed the sport's biggest problems. Beyond specific rivals, Zoller had a burning hatred for an entire category of golfer. The slow players, the plotters, the guys who treated every shot like bomb disposal. To Zoller, slow play wasn't just annoying. It was a sin against entertainment itself. He believed overanalysis paralyzed athleticism and drove paying customers away from the sport. His philosophy was simple: miss it quick. Better to hit a bad shot with rhythm than agonize for 5 minutes and still hit it badly anyway. This put him at war with players like Tom Kite, who Zoller viewed as the embodiment of everything wrong with pace of play. Observers noted Kite's ancient tanned leather neck, while Zoller waited in the fairway, reinforcing the image of talent being held hostage by grinding. Later in his career, commentators would cite Zoller's philosophy as the opposite of players like Kevin Na, whose inability to pull the trigger caused massive delays and controversy. Zoller's point was that these guys were selfish. They put their own neuroticism above everyone else's experience. But Zoller didn't just blame the players. He went after the course designers too, especially Pete Dye. Zoller aligned with the sentiment that Pete Dye ought to be fined for slow play himself. The logic was brutal but sound. Dye's courses, like TPC Sawgrass and the Stadium course, were built on visual intimidation, excessive hazards, and severe penalties. That design philosophy forced players into defensive shells. They became terrified of mistakes, which made them play slower, which turned golf from a flowing sport into a stuttering mess of stops and starts. Zoller argued this was bad design because it killed the rhythm that made golf watchable. To Zoller, professional golfers had a responsibility to the gallery. Every shot makes someone happy, he said, but nobody was happy watching someone read a green for 3 minutes. The plotters were stealing time from everyone. They were treating their personal comfort as more important than the collective experience of the tournament. Zoller's fast play was a rebellion against that selfishness. He respected the audience's time as much as his own score, and he exposed slow players as self-absorbed cowards, too scared to trust their instincts. Then there were the stuffed shirts, the administrators, the country club elitists, the players who carried themselves like golf was too sophisticated for normal people. Despite playing a sport drenched in aristocracy and exclusion, Zoller built his entire brand on being the regular guy in a rich man's world. He used humor as a weapon in this class warfare, and he was ruthless about it. Zoller positioned himself as the working man who happened to be good at golf. He'd say things like, "I'm glad I don't have to make a living farming." That quote did two things. It acknowledged his privilege in getting paid to play a game, but it also aligned him with farmers and laborers instead of the CEOs and bankers who usually populated pro-am events. After his playing career, he launched Fuzzy's ultra-premium vodka with the slogan, "Golf, vodka, fun." It wasn't a luxury product. It was bar-level vodka that stripped away all the pretense. He wanted to be associated with the 19th hole, the democratic clubhouse bar, not the exclusive boardroom. But the real war was about silence. Traditional golf demands absolute quiet. Marshals shushed the crowd like librarians. Zoller found this oppressive and ridiculous. He complained that there were days he could hear men tying their shoelaces in the gallery. He hated the self-important volunteers policing noise. So he whistled, loudly, down every fairway. That whistling was an act of desecration against the church-like atmosphere the establishment tried to enforce. He was signaling that golf was just a game, exposing the USGA and Augusta National's green jackets as absurdly self-serious. The fans loved him for it because he felt like one of them, a guy who just happened to be great at golf instead of someone who thought being great at golf made him better than everyone else. This everyman persona made Zoller beloved, but that same persona, the unfiltered good old boy joker, led directly to his downfall when it crashed into the changing world of the 90s. And that brings us to Tiger Woods and the moment Fuzzy Zoller accidentally exposed himself instead of anyone else. April 1997. Tiger Woods was destroying Augusta National. He was 21 years old, mixed race, and winning by 12 strokes. He represented the future of golf. Athletic, diverse, deadly serious about competition. Fuzzy Zoller, the 1979 champion, represented the past. White, jovial, rooted in the locker room culture of the 70s where everything was supposedly just banter between the guys. After finishing his round, Zoller stood under the famous oak tree at Augusta, drink in hand, the picture of the old guard at leisure. When reporters asked about Woods, Zoller launched into what he clearly thought was harmless ribbing. He said, "That little boy is driving well and he's putting well. He's doing everything it takes to win. So you know what you guys do when he gets in here? You pat him on the back and say congratulations and enjoy it and tell him not to serve fried chicken next year, got it? Then Zoller walked away, snapped his fingers, turned back and added, or collard greens or whatever the hell they serve. Let's break down why this was catastrophic. First, calling Tiger Woods a little boy. In the American South, calling a black man boy carries violent historical weight. It's infantilization used as subjugation for centuries. Even if Zoller meant it about Tiger's age, the racial context made it indefensible. Second, reducing the first black golfer to dominate a major championship to stereotypes about soul food stripped Woods of his individuality. The comments were supposedly about the champion's dinner tradition, where the winner picks the menu, but weaponizing fried chicken and collard greens as a punchline turned it into a racial caricature. The fallout permanently altered Zoller's career. Kmart and Dunlop, major sponsors who'd capitalized on his everyman image, dropped him immediately. They recognized the everyman had become the bigot in public perception. Tiger Woods was busy taping Oprah and didn't respond for 2 weeks. When he finally called the remarks unfortunate and accepted the apology, the delay had let the wound fester into something career-defining. Zoller tried defending himself, saying he was making fun of the champion's dinner and that he'd served fast food hamburgers when he hosted. But that defense meant nothing against the specificity of collard greens. Here's the deeper truth. Zoller thought he was doing a hazing ritual, the veteran ribbing the rookie like always happened in the locker room. But he exposed the insularity and toxicity of that whole culture. He revealed that the humor holding the tour together was built on exclusion. He accidentally demonstrated exactly why Tiger's victory mattered so much. The establishment Woods was entering considered fried chicken jokes acceptable banter from past champions. The good old boy charm Zoller built his career on had a racist underbelly, and he'd just shown it to the world on camera. Zoller later admitted the incident haunted him the rest of his career. He received death threats. His reputation carried a permanent stain. When he died in November 2025 at 74, the Guardian headline read, "Fuzzy Zoller, two-time major winner, haunted by racist Tiger Woods joke, dies aged 74. The joke had become the first line of his obituary, eclipsing the 1979 Masters and the 1984 U.S. Open entirely. Everything he'd accomplished, every rival he'd beaten, every pompous institution he'd mocked, all of it got buried under one moment of catastrophic judgment. And that's the tragic arc of Fuzzy Zoller. He spent his career exposing others. He exposed Tom Watson as a joyless machine and proved fun could win majors. He exposed Greg Norman as a brittle intimidator and crushed him with a smile. He exposed slow players as selfish time thieves. He exposed stuffed shirts as pretentious frauds who forgot golf was supposed to be entertaining. But when he tried exposing Tiger Woods as just another rookie to haze, he exposed himself instead. He exposed the limits of his worldview, the toxicity hiding inside the locker room culture he represented, and the fact that his good old boy charm wasn't charming at all when it crossed into racism. Zoller won 10 PGA Tour events and 2 majors by refusing to be a machine. He remained a damn good player despite back injuries he joked about treating with vodka, which he admitted didn't actually ease back pain. He won the USGA Bob Jones Award for Sportsmanship in 1985, an honor that became deeply ironic after 1997. In his final years, he played the PNC Championship with his daughter Gretchen, showing a softer side of the jokester. But none of that could erase what happened under the oak tree at Augusta. So here's the question we're left with. Was Fuzzy Zoller a rebel who made golf more fun and exposed its worst qualities? Or was he part of the problem the whole time, hiding prejudice behind humor until the mask slipped? Maybe he was both, a genuinely talented golfer who loved the game enough to fight its pretensions, but who never understood that some of those pretensions existed for good reasons. A man who whistled while he worked until the world changed the tune and left him holding nothing but regrets. What do you think defined Fuzzy Zoller's legacy more? His victories over Watson and Norman, or the comments that haunted the rest of his life? Let me know in the comments below. And if this deep dive into golf's most controversial figure got you thinking, hit subscribe. The sport's full of complex characters, and we're just getting started unpacking their stories.
I played beautifully in 2001. I didn't feel like I was playing my best golf. I putted and chipped it quite well, but I managed myself, and I don't know if I just let go that much more, what the difference was, but I just felt and knew I was going to win the golf tournament.
Have you ever wondered what it really takes to become a world #1 golfer at the highest professional level? David Duval did it, but he'll tell you something most champions won't admit openly. There were 5 golfers he absolutely couldn't stand to compete against. Now, before you think this is some angry rant, let me explain what this really means in professional golf. In elite golf, when a champion says they can't stand someone, they're not talking about dislike. They're talking about respect, deep respect. They're talking about rivals so talented and relentless that beating them was almost impossible. These 5 men forced David Duval to become the best version of himself. And in doing that, they created the scar tissue that defined his entire career. Today, we're breaking down why these 5 golfers made Duval's life so difficult. Let's start with Tiger Woods. Duval never feared Woods. He said so directly. He had huge respect for him. But here's what Duval understood. Tiger Woods changed the entire standard of what winning meant in professional golf. Before Woods arrived, you could win with solid ball striking and a decent putter. Woods came along and changed everything forever. You need to dominate driving. You need the best iron shots. You need to scramble better. You need clutch putting. Winning became perfection. And Duval watched this shift happen in real time. He understood that to compete at the highest level, he had to match it completely. He had to transform his body and raise his level. And he did. The years from 1999 to 2001 tell the real story of this rivalry. In 1999, Duval started the season on fire. He won the Mercedes Championships by 9 strokes. Then he went to the Bob Hope Chrysler Classic and shot a final round 59 to win. That's one of the lowest rounds ever shot in PGA Tour history. At this exact moment, Duval was the statistical powerhouse. Woods was the media sensation, but they traded the world #1 ranking back and forth. Duval held it for 15 weeks. They were peers, dangerous peers in competition. The 2001 Masters is where this rivalry truly peaked. Woods and Duval were locked together at 15 under par heading into the back 9. On the 16th hole, Duval's approach went long, and he made a bogey. Woods made par. 1 shot was the difference. Woods won by 2. Duval played 71 holes of nearly perfect golf, but one mistake under maximum pressure was punished immediately. That's what it felt like to play against Tiger Woods. You could play almost flawlessly, but one tiny lapse would cost you everything in a major championship. Here's what the statistics tell us clearly. In 1999, Duval won 4 times before the Masters. Woods won 8 times that year. In 2000, Woods won 9 times and claimed 3 majors. No matter how well Duval played, Woods was always there on the leaderboard. That's why Woods is first on his list. In a fantasy scramble team, Duval picks Woods first because of his mind. His mental toughness is unmatched. The respect is absolute, born from going head-to-head with the greatest player of all time. Now let's talk about Vijay Singh in detail. If Tiger Woods changed the game, Vijay Singh built an unbeatable fortress. Singh had 2 defining characteristics: work ethic and durability. Singh was famous for spending hours on the driving range, before rounds, after rounds, hitting thousands of balls daily. He believed that mechanical repetition was the answer to everything. Singh took this idea to an extreme level that few golfers could match. Duval himself was a range rat. He understood the grind, but Singh took it to another level entirely. Singh's baseline performance was incredibly high because every day was built on repetition and consistency. Singh didn't have hot streaks and cool periods like other players. He was steady, mechanical, relentless, and Duval knew that Singh flat out outworked everyone else on tour. That level of work ethic commanded deep respect from his peers who understood the sacrifice required. Here's where it gets interesting. As Duval's career slid in the early 2000s due to vertigo and back injuries, Singh was entering his prime, and Singh was in his 40s. Most players think about retirement then. Singh was getting better. In 2004, Singh rose to world #1. He won 9 times that year and earned nearly $11 million. Duval watched this from the sidelines with awe. Here was a man in his 40s still dominating the sport. Singh would remain competitive well into his 50s. Duval knew why. It was the work ethic. It was the durability. It was the mechanical approach that didn't break down under stress. The contrast between their swings tells the entire story. Duval's swing was explosive, generated immense power through rapid transition and significant lateral movement. It created brilliant moments. The 59, the world #1 ranking. But that explosive power came with a cost. It put violent torque on his body over time. Singh's swing was different, tall, rhythmic, a wide arc. It generated power through physics and practice, not violence. Singh was the ultimate maintenance player. He didn't rely on adrenaline, he relied on perfect repetition. When an opponent doesn't get tired or break down emotionally, it's almost impossible to beat them consistently. The 2000 Masters showed this perfectly. Duval made 4 birdies on the front 9 to get close to Singh, but Singh's relentless consistency held firm. When Duval's ball found the water, his chance ended. Singh stayed composed and controlled. That's durability, hole after hole, year after year. Duval's respect for Singh is about recognizing someone who refused to fade when pressure mounted. Now, Ernie Els is a completely different story. Els represents something Duval never had naturally. Natural talent that looked effortless. Els had a swing of such fluid grace it appeared he wasn't trying hard. For Duval, who built everything through intense focus, Els was infuriating. Els was efficient. He hit fairways, he hit greens, he putted with a pure stroke, and he did it all while looking completely relaxed. That calm under pressure was a weapon. His rhythm could seduce an opponent into losing their own edge. Duval and Els share something unique historically. They are the 2 players who suffered most directly from Tiger Woods' dominance. In 2000, Ernie finished second to Woods in 2 majors in the same year, the US Open and the Open Championship. Duval had the same experience repeatedly. This shared trauma created mutual respect. Duval knew that Els's natural talent was enough to dominate in any other era of golf. If you remove Woods from 2000 entirely, Els becomes the undisputed player of the year with 2 majors. Duval's can't stand feeling comes from realizing that even without Woods, he would have faced this giant, 6'3", with the touch of a surgeon. In 1998, the international team beat the Americans at the President's Cup. This was the only time this happened in history, and Els was the anchor of that team. That sting went into the scar tissue. Duval notes that Els seemed capable of challenging Woods early on. The real tragedy is that Els had so many close calls. Els won 4 majors, but he could have easily won 8 or 10. Duval respects the sustained consistency and the mental fortitude required to keep competing at the highest professional level. Now we come to Phil Mickelson. If Duval was a scientist calculating probabilities, Mickelson was a jazz musician improvising in real time. Phil had creativity and shot making that nobody else possessed. He had imagination that could separate rounds when conditions demanded something different. Duval wanted to control everything: the ball, the spin, the outcome. Mickelson embraced chaos. He would attempt shots no rational player would consider. High flop shots from hardpan, drivers off the deck, aggressive lines over water. When these shots worked, it was demoralizing for an opponent like Duval, who played by the book. Duval was a supreme ball striker. He led the tour in greens and regulation during his peak. Mickelson had a different skill set. He could beat you even when missing greens. His short game was legendary. In the 2001 Masters, while Duval and Woods played chess, Mickelson played a high variance game. He made 25 birdies that week, a record at the time, but he also made 2 double bogeys. A bad drive could become a birdie through magic recovery shots. But the real story of Duval and Mickelson is about diverging paths. They were contemporaries competing for the same identity, both desperate to shed the label of best player, never to win a major. Duval won the 2001 Open Championship first. Mickelson didn't win his first major until 2004. Then something changed. Duval's body broke down. Mickelson's soared. Duval watched from the sidelines as Phil collected major after major in his 30s and 40s. Duval has reflected that if he had stayed healthy, he might have outdone what Mickelson ultimately accomplished over his long career. Mickelson represents the longevity and fulfillment of potential that Duval was denied by his own body. If you're still watching, you understand these aren't just names on a list. These are the real people who pushed David Duval to excellence and beyond his expectations. But before we get to our 5th and final rival, I want to ask you something really important. Which of these golfers do you think pushed Duval the hardest? Was it Woods' mental perfection, Singh's work ethic, Els's natural talent, Mickelson's unpredictability? Comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. We cover the greatest rivalries in sports history with depth and insight. Now, the last name on Duval's list might actually surprise you. Jim Furyk is the 5th golfer on this list. Furyk doesn't have the star power of Woods. He doesn't have the work ethic legend of Singh. He doesn't have the natural talent of Els. And he doesn't have the creativity of Mickelson. So why exactly is he on this list? Because Furyk proved that efficiency beats aesthetics every single time in golf. Furyk had an unorthodox swing, disjointed, full of loops. It defied every textbook convention. Purists hated it, but Duval valued his methodical consistency above all else. Furyk was proof that you don't need a perfect swing to be perfect at golf. You need a repeatable swing. You need one that delivers the same result every single time. Furyk knew his swing was ugly, but the club face was square at impact. Every single time. Duval respects him because Furyk never compromised his own DNA. He didn't try to look perfect, he just tried to be effective and consistent. Duval has spoken about how he destroyed his own swing, trying to compensate for injuries. He chased ideal positions. He tried to look perfect, and it cost him. Furyk never did that. That's why David Duval respects him so deeply. There's another bond between them. They are the founding members of an exclusive club, the 59 Club, players who have shot 59 or lower on the PGA Tour. Duval shot his 59 at the 1999 Bob Hope Chrysler Classic to win. Furyk later joined with a 59 at the 2013 BMW Championship. Then he shot a 58 at the 2016 Travelers Championship. That shared achievement creates mutual understanding. To shoot 59 requires more than skill. It requires a specific mental state, aggressive calmness. You cannot protect a score, you must keep attacking. Duval knew Furyk was capable of these scoring bursts. Furyk wasn't just a grinder, he was a sniper who could dismantle a course with precision. Furyk's peers called him a pest, a compliment of the highest order. He lacked the length of Woods, the touch of Mickelson, the power of Singh. He beat you by not making mistakes. He hit fairways, he hit greens, he holed putts with an unorthodox cross-handed grip. Year after year, Duval respected this consistency because it's the hardest thing to play against. When an opponent doesn't miss, it forces you to press. And when you press, you make mistakes. Duval has cited Furyk alongside Singh as the benchmark for longevity. He questions whether modern aggressive power will allow current stars to have 20-year careers. Furyk represents the sustainable model of golf that Duval now wishes he could have maintained. Here's what these 5 men represent as a collective whole in professional golf. Woods set the standard. Duval matched it. Singh responded by outworking everyone. Mickelson responded with creativity. Els refined his natural gifts. Furyk perfected his efficiency. They formed a powerful feedback loop of excellence that defined an entire era of professional golf. These 5 golfers weren't just great individually, they were great because they were competing against each other. And Duval made something clear that many people miss completely. The financial rewards available to modern golfers came from the interest generated by these rivalries, these battles between Woods and Duval, between Duval and Singh, between any of them competing for majors. That's what drew eyeballs. That's what made sponsors pay. That's what created the massive money that modern professional golfers chase. So what does it mean that Duval couldn't stand these 5 golfers in competition? It means they were the only ones good enough to push him to his limit. It means they created the scar tissue that defined his career. It means they were worthy adversaries. In the end, Duval's list is a reflection of himself. He sees his own intensity in Woods, his work ethic in Singh, his talent in Els, his boldness in Mickelson, his consistency in Furyk. They were mirrors in which he measured his own worth. For a glorious window from 1999 to 2001, when David Duval looked into those mirrors, he genuinely liked what he saw. A world #1 in professional golf. Someone who feared absolutely no one. Not even the Titans he couldn't stand. That's the real story of David Duval's 5 greatest rivals. And that's exactly why this golden age of golf remains truly unmatched to this day in professional sports history.